church unless it's that.
All right, we're live.
Okay, it's 9 o'clock. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Hopefully all stay warm yet today. First thing we have is to approve the agenda. Is there any additions or corrections to the agenda? If not, we're in order for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion carries. Next is the approval of the minutes for February 8th. Any corrections or additions to those?
Hearing no corrections or additions, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and second to approve the minutes for February 8th. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion carried. Okay, the first thing we have on the agenda is the future plan of the courthouse office. I guess what we did is we wanted to ask the department heads to give us any thoughts and ideas what they have as far as the space that we have downstairs that will be vacated once the jail project is completed. So has anybody got any comments?
Yeah, I would like to start off with one.
Okay.
First of all, I want the department heads to have a lot of input in this. I know we up here will control the budget and things like that, but I also know that we up here will not be here in 15 or 20 years. So I want to make sure that everybody keeps that in mind also. One other thing that I did do, and sometimes it's hard for people to get a good grasp on size of things. So what I did was I measured the current boardroom, and then I went downstairs and measured the room with the wall gone all the way to the south end of that. So it basically extended all the way to the south end of the building. They are approximately, that room would approximately be twice the size of the room that we're currently in. That's just a rough thing so you can see it in your head. That's what the measurements come out pretty close.
Well, and one of the things I thought, or you finished it? Rich, you got anything else?
No.
One of the things that I thought of is that we need to do is, and I'm sure, does Zach have a overall blueprint of those rooms downstairs on that lower floor? Sometime, could you see if we get a copy of that, the board can look at it, and we kind of look at some of that space? Because I think that would help us decide where things go and what shouldn't be. Anybody, any department heads, any comments? Or
At one time, I know that it's important to the supervisors that the passport be moved up from the basement. So I have looked at, the two spaces that are available on the south, or the east and the west side. I know things have changed since we talked about that several years ago before the jail actually started getting built, about moving us up. So now that if you're looking to move the meeting room downstairs and expanding that space, the rest of the sheriff's office would not be big enough for what we need it for. we would have to look at the east side, the southeast side. If we were able to utilize that entire section, we would have closer to what we have space needs for. I don't want to try and combine 3 or 4 offices space into a tiny space. There won't be room for it. So that southeast side, if we could utilize that entire section, we would have space. But to cut out that back section of the current sheriff's office into meeting room space, that room would not be big enough for anything we would be able to utilize it for. We would need space for people to come in, take pictures, fill out paperwork. And that coffee room would give us that space more so than what's left of the sheriff's office. It's got a really high counter. It's kind of short. There's not a lot of space to move around in there. And you'd have more people lingering out in the hallway. As far as the jail side, I think that's going to cost a lot to do something with as far as renovating it into professional looking office space. So that's just my thought about moving us up. Otherwise, if you want to keep us in the basement, something needs to be done with the cell phone service because we no longer have any. The jail going up and all that extra concrete, we can't make calls, we can't get calls, we can't send pictures. People who come down for passports, if they need to call their mom because they don't know when their mom's birthday is, they have to go to the top of the stairs to make a phone call. So that's the issue we have now with basement space. It's just cell phone usage is not there. It's not good anymore. Not that it was ever great, but it's worse.
Well, and one thing that I became aware of, and I don't know if the rest of the board is, I just became aware of this year just lately. We will have to find a spot for Tina. Tisha, the juvenile officer, because they're going to utilize her office upstairs for one of the judges or something. So we need to keep that in mind too. As far as the jail sites, I think you're right, that is probably not going to be feasible. I think that needs to be turned into storage space. The only thing, and I need to look at this again, the west cells may be able to be remodeled better than any of them. So that might be another option too. Any other input?
What cell service was, are you having the most trouble with? All of it, or just US Cellular, or?
I can't speak to all of it. I only have US Cellular.
I can raise that question. It's affecting all cell service down there. So I have Verizon. What do you have, Jason?
Well, I'm at US Cellular and I'm at AT&T. I have AT&T now and First. And the cell service is issue for all things. Verizon is slightly better because of the tower, the people being outside, but we're also kind of in what they call the shadow of the tower. So the antenna's going to shoot over top of the courthouse. It's really pushing a lot of cell service into this courthouse. And back in the summer, I kind of started to investigate bi-directional amplifier for cell phone service in the courthouse and the jail. So the question was, I come to the board and suggest you do something for the courthouse now, or is it better to wait until we can evaluate what the jail might need and discuss one system that covers both buildings. The same thing is true of BDA or bi-directional amplifier system for the radio system, because the jail will probably be difficult to penetrate the radio system. So we might need to do something in that area. So I got some quotes, but there wasn't a clear direction yet. But it is something that can be done. And there's varying levels of cost that are associated with that. The 2 bids that I got were way out of whack. They were extremely on 2 different sides of the coin, and I approached it Ray with it. And it's not something that he necessarily specializes in that part of it. And both of us had struggled to kind of decipher what the best direction was to go. So there's things that can be done, but I think it's even affecting the ground for the house as well. So.
This, what you're talking about, would take care of all the cell phone issues then?
Yeah, it basically is an antenna system that has antennas. We had one in the basement once upon a time, but it's obsolete now because of the technology changing in cell phones. And they're like antennas that go in the ceiling of the interior of the building, and then there's antennas that go on the outside, and they take the radio signal basically and transfer it from, they take the signal from outside the building and pipe it into the building, and vice versa. Your cell phone needs to reach out and takes your cell phone signal.
Well, and
Bi-directional amplifier goes both ways, amplifies this.
And I know that that is an issue down there because, I guess I'm the only one that would know that from on the board here, but when we had that ice storm back many years ago, we spent a lot of time down with Sarah. And you could not, we was, we the supervisor for helping her at that time. And cell service was just terrible down there. You couldn't get through half the time.
Yeah. There's something that needs to be done, but it just wasn't to the point where
And I think that's when that antenna.
we felt like it was a clear direction to bring.
There's also another service that goes on downstairs in the room that we're using for a boardroom right now, and that's juvenile report in, and there's another term for probation.
Officers.
Now, I did stop and visit with them last Thursday, and we don't need to count on them for any space down there because Ken has made the offer to use some of the interrogation rooms for that Thursday that they come in, so they're going to be taken care of. So I did stop to ask them what they needed, because I was kind of worried that we could always throw them into our room, but I just wanted to make sure that we were covered their needs also. So.
Well, I would agree with Carrie that we had discussed moving her department up one floor, and I think that should happen. I think we should make that work. I also am going to say that I believe at some point in time within, I'm not going to say the near future, but I'm going to say in the future, there will probably be another department looking for space, whether it be in the courthouse or the Fricky building. So that's going to definitely come into play. That'll be a rather large staff. I've always wondered, we have the treasurer's office is so tight, and yet the assessor's office and the recorder's office has room to spare. And I just wonder if we shouldn't be considering consolidating those spaces and making better use out of those spaces on the main floor. That probably won't be a very popular item, but I think it's something that definitely needs to be considered.
I know that has been brought up before, and if you look at the floor plans, the assessor's office is very similar size to the auditor's office. Their offices are about the same size. Our vaults are a little different, but the recorder's office is a little smaller, the office space, but their vault is very large, and that makes sense because that's where all their stuff's at. So I don't know how well it would work to move, because she needs a lot of vault space for her stuff. I don't know.
Well, it's going to take some, it's going to take a collaborative effort to make it work well, so that everybody has the space they need.
Well, and we all know that, I know we dance around the issue, but there's been talk about moving the county attorney's office back into the courthouse too. And, whether it happens or not, I think we got plenty of needs that can fill the space. We'll find a space. I think our biggest, one of the things that we're gonna be very hand tight on is that jail. We'll probably just have to turn that into storage, because to convert that into usable office space, you would have to do a lot of expenses. And then you have to worry about the asbestos in the place too. I think it isn't like that. We have plenty of storage space to coordinate, so we can always utilize storage space.
Yeah, I have 2 rooms that I'm using for storage that could be opened up. Now granted, they're in the basement, but I think the comm center has said they'd like some more space, so I think that could get used up pretty quickly.
Of course, if we do move the juvenile officer down there, maybe we could use one of those cells as a background to help deter.
I talked to Keisha very briefly, and she said her only requirement or need was that she didn't really want to be in the basement. That's all she asked. So, which I can understand that for sure.
Well, yeah. And I think she wants to be, as close as she can be to the courtrooms too. So.
That would make sense.
Any other comments?
So what is the situation there? Why is she being moved out of her office?
Because of the project going on upstairs where they're coming through into the building from the new jail. I think they're losing some space up there, and they're gonna move a judge into her office.
Oh,
So she's losing her
so
office.
this is the first time this is being addressed?
It's been talked about before. But I don't know that they were for sure gonna need a judge's space, but it sounds like the judge is saying he wants his own space. I don't know.
I think this is
I
the
haven't
first
talked-
time I just became aware that they were gonna move her. I mean,
I haven't been in all the jail meetings, so I wasn't really sure what was going on when they broke through. But that's the way it was
I
explained.
don't think I've ever heard anything.
I never
Actually,
heard that they were talking about moving
I-
the judges, because
Yeah, I
at
don't
that
think-
time we were short one judge. They had cut us back one.
Right, but have we even discussed, has the jail even discussed about what happens on that floor? When we,
It was just gonna go through there where the simplest place was, and at that time, it wasn't gonna have any effect on the court system. But I don't know whether they've got judges moving around more now, and, they're their own thing up there.
well, this is part of the jail project.
Yeah. But it's too bad we didn't know that sooner, I think.
No, I was just made aware of it too. I didn't know.
And I would say while we're on the court topic, all the old court records that used to be on the Mallard View are still in the basement of this building. I know they're not very happy when they have to come here and dig something out of the records. I don't know if that's in any plans of moving those back to the courthouse. They're not really bothering us any down there, but just as a thought, all those old court records are still in the basement of this building.
Well, they either had to go to Mallard View or here,
Right.
so I would think.
Just a thought. There's some open
I'm
space.
sure it wasn't any easier at Mallard.
No, I don't think it was any easier at Mallard View to get at.
How big a space does that take up, Jason?
It's a pretty good corner of the basement. Our only thing is with the big number, that is our tornado shelter too, so the campground's full in the summer.
Is this space 10 by 15, or
What's that?
how big a space is it, 10 by 15, or?
Probably 20 by 20.
That's how much space is taking up?
Because
Really?
they're all on racks and shelving.
The books are like this big,
Yeah.
the big books.
Like I said, not that it's inconveniencing us, I just throw that in there. If there was a place where you wanted to get those back into the courthouse,
Yeah, that won't-
or in your courthouse in your planning process, where it's more convenient for the clerks and stuff to get at them. And that's just throw that in there.
Does anybody know, and I feel like I should know, but that office in the basement where like the juvenile person was before Keisha came,
That's
it's
on
on
the
the
same
east
floor.
side.
East
Same
side,
floor.
What's in there? Does anybody know?
It's become storage.
Storage.
Yeah, they've moved a bunch of stuff in there.
I wonder if there's room to. I haven't been in there since.
There wouldn't be enough to add what he's talking about in there.
No, that is not a very big space. That's just a little office. Because that's where Tisha used to be at.
Well, how much storage space would there be in the jail? If you went in there with a cutting torch and started cutting all the cells up and knock walls down and stuff like that.
Well, it's basically the auditor's office, the hallway coming into the front doors, and the treasurer's office. I mean, it's that whole.
So it's that whole front part of it.
Yeah.
That's a lot of space.
Well,
We don't have to finish it to make it look
No.
nice, but for storage, for records. everything
well, the
else.
thing is that on the west side, I'm not so sure the guy could renovate that into office space. Those cells are different than the old cells. What's that?
West cell.
The west side.
Yeah, the west cell.
It's just a big, theater with a hallway in front of it, basically.
Well, the east side, where the jailers are now, connects to the garage.
It's broken up.
Yeah,
There's
they
basement
would
cell and,
Yeah, but it would be a better space for, say, Zach, if Zach needed more room, if that would be given a connection to that garage space, rather than putting an office there and having him, walk through to get to the garage from inside.
And, I think we should address Zach as well. He's got a very small room now, and he's got supplies scattered all over the building. It's not really conducive it'd be nice if he could have his supplies all in one spot versus having to go 2 floors or 3 floors to get what he needs. It'd be nice if they were all in one place. The space he has now obviously is not big enough to do that, but
Well, you said that you might be interested in moving downstairs.
I would be
If the
willing, yeah,
board-
I would be willing to move downstairs. It would be nice to be next to the boardroom. It's only,
If the board moved over in the basement.
yeah, if the boardroom were on the ground floor, it would work well. I know you guys only meet once a week, but it's nice when I can just run to my desk rather than.
Well, especially when we ask for some information.
Sure.
Which that happens a lot. I
It
mean,
seems to, and I have all my election equipment in the basement, taken up where the comm center is, that space where Sarah used to be before she moved. And I'm also taking up another space where John DeVolt used to be with election equipment, and I don't like it being down there because I've got water issues and other things. I would like to get that on the ground floor, and that could go in storage on the ground floor, but just to get it out of the basement, and that would open it up for either the cop center to utilize that space or for storage, I suppose, for other things, other than $200,000 worth of equipment that I don't want sitting. I mean, there's been multiple times we went down there, and Jason knows because he works down there, they've had water issues. We go down there, we've got water in all of where our ballots go, we have to dump those out and get water sitting somewhere for 5-6 months. It's disgusting. And not that it's gonna ruin them, they're plastic, but it'd be nice if they were somewhere that was a little less prone to having water spilling on.
You said that there's 2 different sizes of offices on your floor. So you said.
I'm not like
The
an
recorder's
expert on
office-
space, but it
yeah,
just
The recorder's
seems,
office is smaller than the
it
rest
seems
of
to
them?
me the office itself is smaller.
And it's just the recorder's office, or is it,
It seems to be just that one,
okay.
and I might be wrong.
I think you might be
I'm
right
just
because of that
eyeballing it.
stairwell.
I'm just eyeballing it.
But don't the walls line up with the treasurer's office?
They do. Like I said, just eyeballing it, don't quote me on it, don't go in there and measure it and say, well, they're the same, because, I don't know.
Well, I mean,
Anybody
the
else
doors-
think that it's smaller?
The doors
Just-
between the treasurer's office and the recorder's office are at the same spot. So you could walk straight across.
Right,
And then to the east side of both of them is the vault. So wouldn't the vaults be the same size as well?
The vaults maybe, but it, like I said, it just seems that their office is smaller, and I might be wrong.
You have restrooms on one side and the elevator shaft on the other.
Stairwell.
Now, I don't, and a stairwell, so I don't know which one of those would be valued as bigger.
And I might be totally wrong, it just.
That's the only
seems like
difference.
it.
Well, I think at some point, again, I think we need to look at a blueprint of those square footages that would help us.
Okay, so we want one on the ground floor and then,
I would say the
first floor?
first floor too.
So Courtney, if we were to, thank you for being willing to move.
Well, not that I'm excited about it.
I know you
because
would be,
that would
and nobody's gonna be
huge.
excited moving, but how would that work for election when you have walk-in? Or
I
would you
think
just
you
set
just
up?
have to do a really good job of letting people know that they can enter on the east side.
Okay.
There's handicap accessibility on the south side. I think you just have to promote that. Maybe get some signs up, and, you know, even if they come in the main doors, they can come downstairs or take the elevator.
Take the elevator.
So, is it super convenient? No, but we have elections once, maybe twice a year.
Yeah.
Sometimes just once a year, so. I don't know. I mean, obviously, if we would move, there'd be a lot of, I would call it prime real estate, because, I mean, everybody wants to be on that floor. I think if you want to be accessible to the public, for sure. But and we work with the other offices a lot, so it would be, not, I wouldn't call it an inconvenience, but it doesn't make things run as smoothly if we're not on the same floor with them either. So I know that we've always, or you guys have talked that the treasurer needs more space, which I think we all know that. And I was willing to move if that would help, because obviously if you guys aren't using the boardroom, not that that's huge space, but somebody could utilize that for testing, or they can use it, I mean, they use it now that, you know, if they have a meeting, you know, they need some privacy with an individual, but I mean, it's not my office, so I'm not gonna say what would work for somebody else. So
Well,
I just said I'd be willing.
You know, one of the thoughts that we had was that to put a handicap bathroom on that first floor would be utilize that boardroom and split that. Would the treasurer's office be able to utilize that for driver's license? Would that be inconvenience going down the hallway to do that, or?
We probably use it more like as a meeting part. It depends on how you, we're open for suggestions. It just kind of depends on how, if you would just move us into the auditor's room, or if you move us to both sides of the hallway. It just kind of depends on what happens. We would use it, yes.
Once we did a complete swap,
That's been talked about.
where you guys, your office would move into Courtney's office, Courtney would come to yours, if we didn't move her down below, then you could utilize that office, our old meeting space for testing or whatever. I mean, that's more space. I know it's not a ton of space, but it's better.
Right. We make it work. I mean, that's obviously, we don't want to leave it just sitting there empty. But, you know, we're open to suggestions and brainstorm about how to use it.
And understand, none of this is gonna be easy. I mean, it's gonna be a lot of work, like Dean had said.
Right, and I just like, even like Courtney said, she thought the recorder's office seemed small to her. I feel like her office seems smaller than my office, but I think it's just the visual because the way we can set up now.
Yeah. Maybe we can
And
work
they
on a
can
little
be
bit more
exactly the same.
functionality too, setting it up so
I do
it's
think
most
so.
functional in the space.
I think we looked at the floor plan on that one, and I think ours is smaller because we take that, you know, that round thing that comes into our office.
Oh, yeah.
That takes up a huge chunk of it. You gotta walk around. You watch, we'll look at the floor plans and all four of them will be identical. It's- To me, the treasurer's office seems bigger, the reporter seems smaller, and me and the assessor seem the same, but I might be wrong.
Well, I think it's important that we have this discussion to get it started, you know, and that everyone thinks about it, that there's a lot of pieces that gotta come together.
Well, and I think this is something that is gonna take some time. We're not gonna be doing this all at one time. We're gonna have to make it so it fits into the budget. I'm gonna say that we're gonna try to do it as reasonable as we can. It's without a lot of expense. I mean, some of this shouldn't take a lot of expense. There's some that we may have to do some expenditures as far as maybe doing some remodel in certain departments and make it fit. But I surely don't want that to be very expensive. We don't plan on giving anybody a Taj Mahal, let's put it that way. Dalton, how are your needs down there?
I'm good.
You're good?
We got plenty of room. I was thinking since we're gonna be moving, some of our rack space up to the new jail, it'll clear up a lot of room back in for me to have a little more storage down there, which will be nice in my office, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Okay.
So if the environmental health were to move, that would free up some space for you.
Yeah, so anybody who's been in the commissary knows it's pretty cramped, with our two-position center. I think that we should be forward-thinking about the space for the comm center. I think that there's a potential that the state continues to float carrots on sticks in order to get people to consolidate. I'm kind of worried that someday they're going to turn that stick around and start beating us with it. So, I think we should position the comm center to be a place where we consolidate whether ESAPs too, if they're moving up, and we need more space to do that. Our IT area, I know some of you maybe have seen it there. It's pretty small, and we don't have the proper working distance from the racks or proper cable management in that room, so there's some concerns with that. But there's also an idea of moving our stuff into our IT stuff into the jail, and because there's a lot of state systems, everything that kind of comes together, that it really needs to be located here in the comm center where our IT stuff is. So, being able to expand the footprint of the comm center would be helpful. One concern, or one thing that I've been thinking about for a while now is also thinking about emergency operations centers. Most counties have something kind of set up, especially counties our size. Shelby County is one that I've been in. Others. And we really should have pre-populated space for the board and other county decision makers to go in times of emergency. So that there's computers and telephones and a television for monitoring the news, so that if there was a disaster of some kind, there's a place that's secure from the public where you can get the decision makers all in close proximity. You might need to have some place where the county engineer and the county department heads, the treasurer, the recorder, where everybody's sitting around the band, take phones and the ability to make decisions and discuss information as they come in, as it comes in quickly. And so it's maybe a little bit of a radical idea, but I kind of think it'd be good for the EOC to be located here in the comm center, and with IT being in the basement and environmental health were to move up, I would think that it wouldn't be too difficult to make the basement a secure floor of the courthouse. There's already doors in place that can be locked. Some buzzers put in so that we can let people down remotely. Maybe a key needed on the elevator in order to push the button to go to the basement, kind of thing. The storage stuff can remain. There's lots of storage in here, stuff like that. But it's kind of an idea that I had that be a good place to locate something like that. And then that EOC then also has direct ties to the state emergency operations center, so that we can request state resources and stuff like that. Likewise, if it's not a ground floor meeting room or to be the boardroom, you can set like the media up in the boardroom, and if you need to have press conferences, you go to the boiler room, whoever's going up there to talk to the media or something. Questions, the public and things like that. Not something that's gonna happen very often. So I think that space can also be used for training and staff meetings, stuff like that as well. But the only handicap accessible bathroom right now is in the basement, so, you know, I think something about whether handicap accessible restroom, you have to identify a place for that.
But Jason, couldn't that same, if we did the boardroom on the ground level, could that be incorporated in the same room as the ECO, or what do you call it? Couldn't that be done jointly or dual purpose, that office?
I mean, maybe could.
I mean, if we would remodel the boardroom, what I'm saying, we set it up for a boardroom, I think we need to put all the technology we can put into it, because this technology is not going to change the situation we just went through, so we can do this without, you know, issues what we may be doing Zooms or whatever. But I think that boardroom could also be set up for that same thing you're saying. Like all it is, just make sure you have that technology there. You've got the space that we put in there for when the public comes to the boardroom. The only thing is if you don't want the public to be in there, you just lock the door. If it's a situation like you're talking about. I would sooner see us do a joint purpose of that room than to have two rooms in the courthouse with that room that never gets used, maybe once in every 10, 20 years. See what I'm saying?
I think that's.
I think just put the technology in there so you can do it, that you've got the capability of doing it.
Yeah, I would agree with
I mean,
Jimmy on that. And to be quite honest with you, Jason, I mean, if hopefully we never have one, but if there were an emergency like you're describing, just the hallway in the basement could be set up, as long as you have the technology there. I mean, you could set tables up in the hallway and meet, you know, I mean, so I mean, that's plenty of space right there for those people that need to be there. So I don't know that we need to have a specific space for these people to be, if ever, you know.
Well, that's why I say I think it shouldn't make any difference, but if the comm centers are down in the basement and we're one floor above it, it shouldn't make any difference. But just put the technology in that room so you utilize both.
Sure, the EOCs I'm familiar with have, like computer workstations and telephone extensions set up there. And they have, you know, spaces, so that more than just the board members can be there. You have lots of people being able to come in there and also be able to have the technology support to reach out to their people and stuff like that. You know, it's just an idea.
Well, I think
there's going to be space vacated in the basement. It was just something that I thought should be brought up and thought about.
Yeah, and I think it's a good idea, but I think, I guess my point is just, I don't want to tie up the space when we got other places that could utilize that same space. That's why I think we can I think we're going to maybe have to be doing some sharing through this process. So we keep our costs down.
You would be reducing the number of meeting spaces in the courthouse. Also, by turning the meter and the board, how often it matters, but if you need 2 meeting spaces. You have another place like this. It's a lot of night diet up in there because they're holding trainings and stuff, but I'm more meetings and their EOC because it's a space. Just want to bring it up.
No, thank you. Any other thoughts? Richard, you got anything?
Well, there's a lot of moving pieces to this. And I think that we probably should spend some more time discussing it. There's some things that if we do on the first floor, such as trying to get Lisa some more room, if we would move the recorder, then try to allow her to use the south side of that. Then that cuts off restroom facilities for our rest of our employees. It makes a managerial spot that she's got a person sitting way over here and a person sitting way over here, and kind of puts her in a little bit of a bind. So that has to be all thought through. So like I said, there's so many moving pieces to this. I think we should get a list. I think we should try to accomplish as much as we possibly can within the constraints of the building that we have. Because we do have some constraints and it's going to create some very unique challenges to remodel, because this building was built a long time ago. So it still has a lot of value. Don't get me wrong. It's not something you throw away, but it's something that probably needs a facelift. Now, what that is, I think that we should continue to keep the department heads involved. Like I said, at the very beginning, in 10 or 15 years, a lot of these people will still be there and still trying to operate in it. We won't. But we also have to watch the numbers and try to make it work financially for the taxpayers. So I think it's something we just keep on the burner. And I wouldn't be opposed to appointing a committee if you'd like to pick out some people to do that, or just keep open dialogue amongst everybody. I'm okay that way too. So it's just something that I think the dialogue needs to continue from time to time. Maybe we quarterly revisit this, and maybe new things will come up, and maybe we start to see a plan develop in front of us, at least pieces of the plan starting to come through. We got to wait till, first of all, we got to wait till the jail is finished to see, because that's probably fall at best before they're vacated. There'd be odds and ends things for quite a while. Yeah.
I like your idea of, have everybody that's affected, maybe come up with a list of what they need, and then they can present that to the board, and then I think that'll give everybody an idea.
I think all of
It'd be a place to start anyways.
I think Courtney's on to something there, and we want to keep everybody's thoughts in this process. So
I agree with you. I think that we need to keep everybody involved that's going to be involved in it. I think get those thoughts put together. I think the other thing is what we need to do is get the drawings of those two floors, so we know what square footage we're actually working with. And then I think we need to get together again and just help do some more brainstorming.
It'd be ideal if the walls were made out of concrete, because it'd be easy, you could take down a sheetrock wall pretty simply. But the only sheetrock walls I found were in the sheriff's office, where his two offices, where he's at and where the lieutenants are at. Those are sheetrock, but every other wall I looked at was concrete.
Isn't those in the southeast corner down there also sheetrock?
Like where the MWI room and stuff were at?
Yeah.
Concrete.
Concrete?
Yep. So anyway, something to keep in mind as well. You talk about remodeling the jail and how much that's going to cost. So.
I guess I have a question, and I've never, with the jail construction, I've never heard this. Right now, if you press your button, your security button, the sheriff comes up from the first floor.
They will if they're in the office.
Right.
If the deputy's not, then the city PD responds.
Okay, so when the new jail is finished, how does the sheriff gain access to the courthouse? How, if you press the button, where's that part where the deputy or sheriff, how does that individual get to the
Sounds like a
auditor's
Jason
office?
question to me, because I think it goes to you, right?
I believe they're going to come from the courtroom down. They'll come through the courtroom and then come down the steps.
Okay,
Or through the outside door.
or through the outside.
Or go out and then come back in.
So there'd be actually two ways to get.
Well,
Am I right, though, if we press the button? it
Yeah,
goes to
so
you?
as far as the button activation, if anybody activates the panic button, it works us, and we'll send another spot as well. we would dispatch the available person, so if somebody, the sheriff's office would dispatch them, dispatch the police department. As far as the logistics, and sort of the jail was, like, so and the files and appointments, you all are, all of it. I know there's a pass through to go from the sheriff's office area to the courtroom area. There would also be the ability to kind of go out of one door and come in another from the parking garage area into the ground floor area.
You don't think there's a pass through on the first floor?
Is that west door, the west door of the courthouse that came in and then goes down there to the main door, goes into Zach's office? There's still gonna be accessibility.
That's
from
what I
the
thought.
Jail through that door, but they gotta go down into the parking garage and then come back up.
There's a stairwell. and
Yeah.
The elevator shaft between the two buildings. And then come out of the sheriff's office, probably get to the stairwell.
When I talked to the sheriff, he told me if we needed to go over there, we would just come in. We'd go outside, you know, the front door, because if you go in on the ground level, it's like, well, you're in the garage.
Well,
And there's no way to get up in there if you're not.
that elevator that's on that side will be a secure elevator, that's
Right.
why.
I mean, there'll
So
only
he
be
didn't say
certain
anything- he
people.
didn't say anything about going up to the second, to the courtroom?
No, because if you do that, you'd be in with the inmates, wouldn't you?
Is he where?
Courthouse
See, the problem, that elevator is gonna be, that
The only
elevator,
way that-
Yes,
So the
yes.
only way that you can get access to the sheriff's department is to go outside and come back in again.
that or they buzz you through security.
Yeah.
Because that elevator is gonna be a secure elevator for the prisoners.
No, through the court system, their offices are on the top floor.
Yes.
And there's access to bring prisoners through, so they can come through that path and come down through the court system also. They could go down one floor, either by an elevator or steps, and then come out the front and come in the front. Or they could go down the steps and the elevator clear to the garage floor and then come back in through the boardroom where we're at now and then go back up the other way. So there's 3 different ways. Are they all super convenient? No, but they're accessible.
Like I
But
said,
as far
what
as
I'm
an
saying,
employee, you can't get in there.
but as far as the elevator, that is gonna be secure elevator. My understanding is if she wants to use that elevator, she has to,
Just go around.
she can call the sheriff and they can
Could come
unlock
here.
it for her.
Yeah.
It'll be easier, based off his question about hitting the buttons in the sheriff's office to go from the new jail into the courthouse than it would be for, like me to go from the courthouse into the
As
jail.
far as the sheriff getting around, that's not an
Yes,
issue.
they have multiple ways to get in and out, whereas we want to go over there, we
Yeah.
have to go in the main first.
Okay, any other comments?
I'll mention this, on the building committee for the Michigan school, system. And, you know, we had some assessments done and stuff early on for the mechanical side. But then we found it very helpful, once we got an architect involved, who specializes in how to use space. And, you know, we take things like the building plans and things like that. And they can assess the space that you have and what your needs are and things like that. And I don't know if the board might be ready to pull that trigger, but, you know, I think that the committee might spin their wheels a little while trying to wrap their head around something that somebody that's had experience and trained in that area might be able to be more efficient. Obviously, they're in charge of that. There'd be something else to consider is what's the right point. And discussion.
Any other comments? Okay. Well, this gets us started, so we'll keep you informed and we will keep looking forward to this. And we'll get some blueprints and see what our spaces are there. If you have any other thoughts, why don't you give them to Courtney and she'll forward it on to us. And we'll go from there. Does anybody else have any questions? Again, like I said, this is not going to be a quick process. We're a long ways from doing anything. We're at the jail, so. Okay. Next, we'll go into our budget workshop discussion. What do you want to do, Courtney? You want to start with these?
Yeah, I think the budgetary request is probably something you guys need to decide on first. Everything that was requested by these departments is in the budget. So if you guys deny any of these requests, obviously it would reduce our asking overall.
You have nonprofits in this, right?
Yes,
So they were in the last one, right, too, then, probably.
some. But no, everything is in there that needs to be in there right now.
Okay, so Courtney's saying we should go through these budgetary requests. Does anybody want to start? We got first in conservation. Jason did do a proposed salary adjustments for each position in the department to bring staff up to date to current situations. I want to commend Jason for the way he did it. He did a total review of all his staff and pretty well kept it within reason of not raising the budget very much. Does anybody have any comments on that? Or Jason, do you have any comments first?
Unless you have any questions.
Okay.
Like I said, my goal is just to, with the union no longer playing our department. So obviously, our hands were kind of tied for years with, basically it came down to the union, what you guys in the union decided on for wages. So without that union representation now, obviously it's kind of my job to keep things updated, I guess, with salaries and wages based on statewide averages and just for employee recruitment, employee retention, keeping things competitive. What's there with my staff, so that's kind of what the adjustment was for this year. Like I said, hopefully you guys can agree with that. If you have any specific questions, I'll gladly answer.
Anybody got any comments?
Well, I would just say that his asking for his employees will change his budget by $4,183. If we do not grant this, that is the amount of money that will actually go back to the budget. However, his budget is $29,360 below what his request was from last year, correct? Somewhere around there. Yeah, well, that's the way it looks to me, and I really don't have any problem with that request as long as, you know, you're budget neutral, you know? And I believe, you know, I think Jason does have some difficulties where other department heads have got deputies and have processes of moving individuals through merit up the pay scale. So I really don't have any problem with Jason's request.
And even with that additional 4,100, he's still below requesting the budget from last
Yeah,
year.
like $25,000. Yeah.
It's really hard to argue, and I know this can't happen in every department, but it's really hard to argue his position that actually brings in a pretty good stream of revenue that goes back to the general fund. So there's that too. I actually don't have any issues with Jason's request. I agree with what he said.
Any other comments?
Jason, you know where I'm at on this. I have one more question for you. Next year, will you still go through the same process of evaluating all your employees?
Yeah, I mean, I do that every year regardless. The reason for my adjustment this year was starting to get out of whack. I think if we can get it back, you know, with this adjustment this year to where we're somewhere I'm comfortable with, and you guys are comfortable with, obviously, then, you know, moving forward, we'll probably just, for me anyway, like I said, I evaluate every year regardless, but I think normal year would probably make an adjustment this year. There probably would need to be an adjustment made next year, probably whatever that's awful for pay raise for next year. But I do evaluate every year. Just felt this year, the way my budget was laid out this year was a good year to make some adjustments. No, this won't be an annual request. Just like I said, this year was just an adjustment year for me based on some statewide averages and the numbers we've been looking at. So,
Let me ask you another question, Jason. When you evaluate them, do you actually sit down with them and do an employee review with them?
we do reviews every year.
You do reviews, okay, that's. All right. Any other comments, questions? Okay. I take it everybody's been satisfied with that. So, next is GIS. Anybody want to start with that?
Sarah, once again, what was your opinion that when Neil and I met with you last year, we were in that transition year of moving you to GIS and with Carl still in the game and you kind of under his wing, but yet towards the end, you were totally doing it and taking care of GIS. What do you recall as we talked about that?
I recall when I was presented the wage and the position that we kind of talked back and forth about getting me up there to where a department head should be, to where GIS should be, and that I would accept the lower wage until I had gotten training, I had, you know, Carl had retired, and then we would reevaluate the wages as my progress had gone with classes in GIS.
And have you done all the classes and requirements?
Yes, and I went 2 programs in a matter of 12 months. GIS is going from ArcMaps to ArcPro. So in the next 4 to 5 years, what we are working with is going to be gone. So I'm doing both at the same time.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Any other questions on that?
Rich and I met with her in the pre-budget, and she had all the boxes checked that she was supposed to have done by this year.
I'd like to say too, because I work with her very closely, that she knows it very well. Any questions that I have, or she doesn't know she can get an answer, she knows where to go to get that answer and get the stuff to me as soon as she can. She's very responsive, very knowledgeable. I've been very pleased with her. Having her in my office has really been great, rather than in the basement, the Carroll is.
She's very useful to me as well, by trying to learn zoning and asking her for maps and stuff that I do.
I think from a board's perspective, we can't ask an employee to go do all this stuff and then not follow through on our end. So I think this is just kind of a pester. I don't really think, in my opinion, do not feel this is up to the babe. She did everything we asked her to do. We need to follow through on her.
So was Rich or somebody down there can answer this question? Was this the $4,500? Was that the amount that was determined to move her up to? Or, I mean, I'm looking at the what you have here as far as your comparison sheet. And Fayette County is a part-time position at $20,000. And then if you go to the back, you have smaller counties that are 20,000 and Shelby County's $1,750. So I don't know, I don't like the comparisons, but I guess it seems to me like to go beyond the top of this would probably be a little bit. I guess I would be okay with giving you an increase, but I'm not sure $4,540 is. Pardon me?
May I comment on Shelby County?
Yeah.
Shelby County actually uses Schneider. And they pay mid to upper $35,000 a year for a person to sit in a chair 2 times a month. They have a person.
Well, they have somebody contracted come in. Okay.
So they.
Well, I mean, that explains that.
Yeah, there's been mid to upper 30,000. So
Yep.
I talked to
Okay.
Schneider, or Shelby.
Yeah, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So you are going to be, how much at GIS? How much is your time going to be at GIS?
I'll do half-time GIS, and then I split the other half currently between the recorder's office and the assessor's office.
Okay, so, all right.
So 4 hours a day approximately.
Well, and now my concern was kind of like Dean. I questioned if this is too big a jump all at one time. Don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to paying people, but sometimes you got to do what the taxpayers expect too. You know, you can't just hand down. So this would put you. My question, I guess, do you think that you would not need any more additional jumps in the future, near future? Ashley, you got a comment right back here?
Yeah, I haven't seen her spreadsheet or anything like that element, that I don't know for sure what she's asking, but I will say that with how quickly she's put on, I would definitely suggest keeping in mind that, she would not be one that you want to lose to another county because she would make more somewhere else.
Anybody else have any other comments?
Sure. I'll just know my concerns to GIS, becoming more of an important to 911 routing. So, in the one metro, the state's going to start routing 911 calls based on GIS location. That's going to come to us here in the next couple of years as well. And GIS information has to be very accurate and very precise for 911 location. Carroll did a good job of keeping this up there. Sarah's been doing a good job of keeping it contained and working on some little bugs, little things out of it. And when that move happens, there will be some sort of a 24-hour component to GIS. If there's something that happens with GIS data that affects 911 call routing, I'll be calling Sarah and be like, hey, this is the problem, you gotta fix this now. Not that it could be a mistake, it could glitch in the program, it could be corrupted data, it could be anything, but there'll be a point where we'll have to rely on her for emergency type stuff if it affects 911.
Any other questions, comments?
I'll say that anytime I needed any mapping, had no problem getting it. And it is nice not having to go to the basement to get it.
Like my comment, Carl took care of a lot of the GIS stuff before. He got involved in that and it was pretty technical. I passed a lot of those things down to Sarah and explained them to her. And she actually has caught on very well, and GIS hasn't been that much of a burden to the IT department because of that. So I appreciate her taking the time to sit down and learn stuff rather than just asking IT to do it, so.
Well, again, as we don't stand here hand out money, we want justifications for it. And my concern was that the big jump all at one time. Does anybody else have any comment? Any thoughts of what you're gonna do here?
Well, Cindy, I'm gonna have to ask you a question too, as we get closer to a retirement in your office. The problem I'm starting to see here, and maybe we missed it before, and that was kind of maybe some of my fault, but we have a department head working for a department head. And that can generate a lot of revenue or a lot of expenses for us. I'm just trying to place this all together. I know we created it because we started this process. I still think we're on the right track. So.
She would only be working for me after that time.
Well, that might be a little bit of a jump, more than maybe than what we were thinking. I have no records on the conversation, so I can't move one way or another on that. So I guess the $4,540, I'm okay with it. We're gonna have to start keeping that in line a little bit because that is kind of a part-time job. I hate to classify that it's very important to you, but that's a thing that is kind of half-time position. So I'm okay with it for this year. We're gonna have to, we'll keep a very close eye on it from that point.
But, and you know, one thing about using comparables are good to look at. It gives you an idea, but you can't put a lot of faith in them always because every department or different counties operate different ways. They have different responsibilities and some have more duties than others. So, yeah, it's a good way to look at it, but I don't want to constantly looking at comparables either because I think it needs to be job performance. And that's one of the issues I have with government because a lot of times we do not give raises based on job performance, which is why I like the way Jason did his thing. He went through the whole process of evaluating people and stuff in job performance. I think that's very important. But what I'm getting my point is let's not hang our hat totally on comparables because everything is done different in every county. Some have more duties than others. You know, like this Shelby thing, you made us aware of that. So I'm just saying that. But if you guys that set up the hiring or you have no problem with it, I guess I don't either. My big concern was that big jump. I do not like seeing big jumps at one time.
Was this the amount that was promised you?
I don't have the amount that was promised to me, but we discussed getting him to with other GIS leaders.
So how long have you actually been doing GIS? It's been a year?
2 years. So I've done GIS since January last year, so a year and 1 month, but I've been in the courthouse since April 2000.
So you've been doing it, Carroll was just overlooking you up that point?
Carl was with me every morning from 8 to noon for probably the first couple of months, and then COVID happened, and then it was a lot of self-taught. Carl's a great mentor, always there for me, 100%. But after COVID happened, we didn't see a lot of each other, and he did tell me he was very proud of how well I did handle that.
You know, in my mind, I'm thinking Carl just retired, so I was just thinking you're only been on your own for like a month, you know. But then I got to remember this doesn't go into effect until July 1st either. So you got to keep everything moving in the right direction.
And you're currently at 17,680, right? With this. So really you'd be going up to 22,220.
Any other questions or comments? You're able to leave it in, Ben?
I say we leave it.
Okay. All right, next is the attorney, adjusted proposed salary, and I think this was in there for, Rich, you did his budget. Was this-
Yeah.
This was for someone he thinks is going to retire, possibly?
Possibly a retirement, possibly, and or a replacement of some personnel. And there was a little fear that after the last hire, he thinks that the dollar amount might be needed in order to get an employee that fits what he's wanting to get done in the office. Now, he did tell us that he wouldn't use it if we didn't come to that bridge. Whether he'll come to that bridge or not, I have no idea for sure. He suspects that could happen, but he doesn't know that. He was just wanting to build it into his budget. It would be there, so he could make that maneuver if he needed to. I be opposed